Nobody saw it coming. The Manhattan courtroom fell into a stunned silence as an unexpected figure slowly stepped toward the witness stand. Janice Combs, the 83-year-old mother of music mogul Sean Diddy Combs. Her presence alone sent shockwaves through the packed room, causing even the seasoned lawyers to exchange nervous glances. Until this moment, Diddy had appeared unshakable, his confidence radiating despite the weight of serious charges. But now, his composed facade shattered. His expression shifted from certainty to disbelief, the color draining from his face as his most trusted defender prepared to speak against him. Janice Combs, the woman who'd shielded her son through decades of scandals and triumphs, was about to reveal a truth that would forever alter his legacy. What exactly would she expose, and why had she finally broken her silence? Her testimony wasn't just another courtroom drama, it was a mother's ultimate reckoning with the hidden darkness of her son's fame. The courtroom was already heavy with tension when the prosecutor announced in a calm yet commanding voice, "The United States calls Janice Combs." Instantly, a stunned silence engulfed the packed federal courthouse. Journalists paused mid-note, and even the judge, normally unflappable, raised an eyebrow in surprise. This was no ordinary witness. Janice Combs, the 83-year-old mother of Sean Diddy Combs, had never been mentioned as a potential witness. Her sudden appearance shattered expectations, igniting whispers and speculations that rippled throughout the room. Heads swiveled to catch sight of the frail yet determined woman walking slowly toward the witness stand. Her presence alone was enough to shift the balance of the trial. Until now, Diddy had appeared confident, consulting calmly with his attorneys, occasionally flashing reassuring smiles at supporters in the gallery. But as he saw his mother making her deliberate journey, his composure fractured. His previously steady hands froze mid-motion, and his expression transitioned from calculated control to stunned disbelief. It was as if he'd suddenly realized the trial was no longer about evidence or legal maneuvers. It had become intensely personal. The prosecution's strategic gamble was clear. Janice Combs was more than just a witness. She was the emotional core, the one person whose testimony had the power to transcend legal arguments and speak directly to Diddy's true character. Everyone in that courtroom understood the gravity of this moment. Janice had spent decades publicly supporting her son, celebrating his rise from intern to billionaire entrepreneur. If she was here, prepared to speak against him, something deeply troubling had unraveled behind closed doors. As she settled onto the witness stand, the defense attorneys sprang to action, desperate to block her testimony. They argued passionately, claiming that mother-son conversations were privileged and prejudicial. Yet, after a brief but intense sidebar, the judge overruled their objections, signaling that Janice's words would indeed become part of the public record. The defense team's panic was palpable. Diddy himself tugged anxiously at his attorney's sleeve, seemingly already resigned to what was coming next. In those few heart-pounding minutes before Janice even spoke a single word, the dynamics of the trial had irrevocably changed. Everyone present knew it. The next statements would redefine Diddy's fate. What no one yet realized, however, was just how profoundly devastating her revelations would be. As Janice Combs adjusted herself in the witness chair, every eye in the courtroom locked onto her. She sat with quiet dignity, her posture straight, betraying none of the emotions undoubtedly swirling beneath her composed exterior. For decades, she had been her son's fiercest advocate, fiercely protective and proudly loyal, but now her loyalty would take on a startling new form, speaking the unfiltered truth. The prosecutor approached gently, aware of the emotional turmoil that this testimony would unleash. "Mrs. Combs," she began respectfully, "we appreciate you being here today. I understand this must be extremely difficult." Janice nodded briefly, her voice calm, yet carrying the weight of 1,000 unsaid words. "Yes, it is, but sometimes difficult truths are necessary." Across the room, Diddy visibly stiffened, gripping the edge of the table as if bracing himself for impact. His carefully cultivated public image was about to collide head-on with the private realities only his mother could disclose. Janice's eyes briefly flickered toward her son, but quickly shifted back to the prosecutor, determined to see this through. The prosecutor eased into the questioning carefully, first allowing Janice to describe the pride she once felt watching her son rise to fame and fortune. Her voice softened as she spoke of his early ambition, charisma, and unmatched determination. But as she began to reflect on the cost of that success, her voice took on a sharper edge. At first, I celebrated his accomplishments. He achieved things I never dreamed possible. But slowly, I began noticing troubling signs, changes I could no longer ignore. Janice recounted visits to her son's homes where something felt unsettlingly off. She spoke of parties abruptly ended, young women escorted out in tears, staff acting suspiciously, and rooms she was explicitly forbidden to enter. Her vivid, controlled testimony painted a disturbing picture, one of secrecy, intimidation, and an uncomfortable silence surrounding her son's life. Diddy's attorney shifted nervously, scrambling to counter her powerful narrative. Their objections, however, seemed to only reinforce the gravity of Janice's revelations. The judge, sensing the importance of her testimony, overruled each attempt to silence her. By the time Janice paused to collect herself, the entire courtroom had been brought to the edge of their seats. She had barely begun, yet her words were already reshaping how everyone viewed her son. And now she was preparing to reveal even deeper truths, truths that could shatter the very foundation of Diddy's carefully constructed empire. The prosecutor gently steered Janice deeper into her troubling observations, focusing on moments when she questioned her son directly. Janice described candid, painful conversations that many mothers would instinctively avoid, talks filled with tension and discomfort. When allegations first surfaced publicly around 2017, Janice explained softly, I called Sean immediately. I asked him directly if there was truth to the claims. He brushed them off, told me it was all about money and envy, just industry politics. She paused, her voice betraying subtle pain. I believed him because I wanted to, but her voice grew stronger as she described how her doubts intensified over the years. Visits to Diddy's homes grew increasingly strained, conversations more evasive. She vividly recounted a particular moment at his Miami mansion, arriving unexpectedly after a lavish party. Janice's tone turned somber as she described witnessing young women in distress and security guards collecting guests' phones. When confronted, her son reacted with startling anger, his rage confirming her worst suspicions. As Janice detailed these events, jurors exchanged uneasy glances, sensing the weight of her testimony. The prosecutor presented a photograph of a private studio at Diddy's Los Angeles property, an area Janice was strictly forbidden to enter. She looked closely, nodding gravely. Yes, I recognize this. Sean converted the pool house around 2010, but suddenly even I wasn't welcome inside. Her voice remained steady, but her eyes betrayed deep sadness. It was clear that Janice had carried these burdens privately, conflicted between loyalty to her son and her growing alarm. The prosecutor asked pointedly, "What made you finally confront your son again after Cassie's allegations surfaced publicly?" Janice drew a deep breath. After seeing surveillance footage released in 2024, footage I simply couldn't deny, I knew I had to hear the truth directly from Sean. When I confronted him, he said something I'll never forget. "Mom, you don't build what I've built by playing by everyone else's rules. Sometimes people get hurt." Her voice broke slightly, revealing the profound impact of this admission. That's when I realized he had lost himself. He didn't see people as individuals anymore, only pieces in his game. Diddy, visibly shaken by his mother's words, stared downward, unable to meet her gaze. Janice's testimony had peeled back the curtain, revealing a deeply troubling side to a man who, until now, had largely controlled his narrative, but her revelations were only just beginning. Janice Combs' voice softened, but grew more resolute as she recounted the moment that truly shattered her denial, the explosive allegations brought by singer Cassie. In late 2023, when Cassie filed her lawsuit detailing disturbing accusations, Janice knew it couldn't simply be dismissed as gossip or greed. Her worst fears crystallized upon seeing the haunting surveillance video, a shocking visual she could no longer rationalize away. I called Sean immediately, Janice recalled, her voice tightening with emotion. When I confronted him, desperate for reassurance, he told me it was just a difficult time, a misunderstanding taken out of context. But the man I saw in that footage, the anger, the violence, that wasn't a stranger. I recognized that side of Sean. I had seen glimpses of it before, and it broke my heart. The courtroom sat transfixed, jurors leaning forward, captivated by the raw honesty of a mother's pain. Janice's revelation was a stark acknowledgement, impossible to ignore, laying bare the reality she had tried to deny for years. Her testimony confirmed what prosecutors had struggled to prove conclusively. Diddy's carefully crafted image masked darker truths beneath. The prosecutor gently pressed further. Did Sean ever explicitly admit his guilt to you? Janice took a measured breath before responding, her answer deliberate and precise. Not explicitly at first. He insisted everything was consensual, that people sometimes regretted their choices afterward. But I knew better. Consent can't exist where fear and power dominate. He knew it too. Jurors exchanged solemn glances. This testimony wasn't just powerful, it resonated deeply on a human level. Janice's revelations went beyond legal arguments and technicalities. They spoke directly to the emotional truth behind Diddy's behavior, the truth only a mother's intuition and experience could validate. Janice's steady, unwavering gaze returned to her son, who sat frozen, visibly devastated by the crushing weight of her honesty. It wasn't just about the law for me, she explained quietly. It was about integrity, about who my son had become. When Cassie spoke out, something shifted inside me. I couldn't pretend anymore. I had to face the truth, no matter how painful. Her testimony marked a seismic shift in the trial, delivering a blow far more damaging than any prosecutor's argument or victim's accusation could alone. Janice's words had peeled away layers of illusion, leaving behind only stark reality. Yet, even now, she wasn't finished speaking. As the courtroom hung on Janice's every word, the prosecutor carefully introduced evidence Janice herself had kept, a collection of private notes, handwritten in moments of quiet desperation. These were not the words of a prosecutor or a scorned business partner. They were the meticulous, heartbreaking observations of a mother wrestling with the truth. Janice calmly examined the notes as they were displayed, her voice steady yet undeniably weighted with emotion. I started writing down my concerns because I needed clarity, she explained. At first, I thought my love as a mother was blinding me. Writing it down helped me see clearly what I had tried so long to ignore. The prosecutor guided her gently through these notes, which detailed troubling incidents spanning more than a decade, private moments of anger, unsettling encounters at parties, and warnings from people who feared speaking openly. Jurors watched, visibly moved, as Janice spoke candidly about each entry, her testimony compelling precisely because it was so painstakingly sincere. I didn't want to believe what I was seeing, Janice admitted, her voice quiet yet firm, but the patterns became undeniable. Lists of women's names labeled handled or potential problem. When I asked Sean, he took them from my hands, brushing me off with the explanation that it was just business. But a mother knows when her child is hiding something, even if he's grown. Diddy sat motionless, eyes fixed blankly on the table, his carefully crafted persona crumbling with each revelation. Jurors shifted uncomfortably, recognizing the profound authenticity of Janice's words. Her testimony had bridged the gap between allegations and reality in a way no previous witness had accomplished. Janice continued, recounting her decision to finally confront Sean directly at the detention center shortly after his arrest. I asked him to tell me everything, the truth he wouldn't share publicly. I told him I could no longer support him blindly. He admitted that he had built a world where rules didn't apply to him, where power meant control, no matter the cost. As Janice described the heartbreaking moment of clarity, her voice trembled slightly, yet her resolve never faltered. I realized my son had lost himself. The line between right and wrong wasn't blurred, it had vanished entirely. This compelling testimony was more devastating than any single piece of physical evidence. It was raw, credible, and deeply personal. A mother's courage exposing uncomfortable truths that would forever change how the world saw Diddy, and perhaps more importantly, how he saw himself. By now, the emotional tension in the courtroom was palpable. Jurors leaned forward, riveted by the deeply personal narrative unfolding before them. Diddy's attorneys whispered urgently among themselves, their strategies unraveling beneath the powerful weight of Janice's words. Diddy himself, once the embodiment of charisma and confidence, appeared visibly diminished, his eyes heavy with remorse, shock, and perhaps something deeper, betrayal. Janice's gaze finally rested firmly on her son, unflinching in its clarity. This was a look only a mother could deliver, a powerful blend of disappointment and unconditional love. Diddy returned her gaze briefly, and for a fleeting moment, the courtroom saw something profoundly human and vulnerable pass between them. It was a silent exchange that spoke volumes, a mother confronting her son's darkest truths, and a son recognizing the weight of her honesty. Even seasoned courtroom observers felt the gravity of this deeply personal drama. Reporters quietly tapped notes, sensing they were witnessing a rare moment in high-profile legal history, a defendant's carefully constructed public facade collapsing in real time, dismantled not by aggressive prosecution, but by the gentle yet relentless honesty of a mother's testimony. As the prosecutor concluded her questions, she allowed a moment of silence, a thoughtful pause, letting the emotional impact settle deeply with the jury. When the defense attorney rose for cross-examination, he approached cautiously, well aware that aggressively challenging Janice could backfire disastrously. His tone was gentle, almost apologetic, as he attempted only to clarify that Janice's testimony was rooted in personal observation and impressions rather than first-hand criminal witness. Yet even this attempt at softening her revelations did little to ease the emotional resonance of her testimony. Janice responded calmly, acknowledging openly that she had not witnessed specific crimes herself, but reiterating that the patterns, the private admissions, and her own deep sense of unease told a truth she could not deny. As Janice was finally excused from the stand, a quiet dignity radiated from her. She paused one final time, looking directly at her son, holding his gaze firmly. The silence between them was heavy with unspoken pain, regret, and perhaps hope for eventual redemption. When she left the courtroom, her presence lingered powerfully. Everyone knew they had just witnessed a profound turning point. Janice's words hadn't just challenged her son's innocence, they had reshaped how everyone present understood power, accountability, and the enduring strength of a mother's truth. Following Janice's emotionally charged testimony, the prosecution called Dr. Margaret Chen, an esteemed psychologist specializing in family dynamics among high-profile individuals. Her role was clear: provide expert context to Janice's words, explaining their deeper implications to the jury. Dr. Chen's presence immediately shifted the courtroom atmosphere. Calm and authoritative, she explained the extraordinary significance of Janice Combs testifying against her own son. Typically, Dr. Chen began, family members in these high-profile cases either fiercely defend or remain silent. For a mother like Mrs. Combs to publicly break from this pattern indicates what psychologists call a moral tipping point, a moment when personal ethics outweigh familial loyalty. Jurors listened attentively, understanding now that Janice's testimony wasn't simply emotional, it was a psychological breakthrough, revealing a profound internal struggle. Dr. Chen continued, describing how Diddy's responses, rationalizing harmful behavior as just business, were symptomatic of power insulation. Individuals with immense wealth and fame often operate in worlds insulated from normal consequences, she clarified, surrounded by people who affirm their exceptionalism and shield them from accountability. The prosecutor displayed excerpts from Janice's notes, asking Dr. Chen about their significance. These notes illustrate a common psychological journey, Dr. Chen explained. Initially, Mrs. Combs justified troubling behaviors, attributing them to stress or isolated incidents. Over time, her clarity sharpened, recognizing these behaviors as systematic patterns of manipulation and coercion. Her testimony painted Diddy's world as dangerously distorted by unchecked power. When Mr. Combs told his mother, "That's just how power works," he demonstrated a deeply ingrained belief system, one reinforced by decades of privilege and complicity, Dr. Chen stated firmly. This professional interpretation resonated strongly with the jurors, reinforcing Janice's credibility. Under cross-examination, defense attorneys challenged the broad psychological interpretations as speculative, emphasizing Dr. Chen had not directly observed family interactions. Yet even these objections couldn't fully undermine her testimony. Dr. Chen calmly acknowledged limitations, but reiterated the significance of Janice's gradual realization, a hallmark of authenticity and credibility. As Dr. Chen concluded, the courtroom felt profoundly different. Her expert insights had elevated Janice's personal testimony from emotional revelations to undeniable evidence of a systemic pattern of abuse, power, and manipulation. It was now clearer than ever that Diddy's actions weren't isolated incidents. They were symptoms of deeper, unchecked power dynamics. Jurors had not just witnessed a mother's emotional reckoning, they had seen a rare psychological unraveling of celebrity myth-making. In an unprecedented twist that stunned everyone present, Diddy himself stood and requested permission to address the court. The judge, clearly surprised, allowed it, with the understanding that he'd testify under oath, subject to cross-examination. Gone was the charismatic billionaire, replaced now by a humbled man whose demeanor spoke volumes before he even uttered a word. As he stepped onto the stand, the silence in the room deepened. He began speaking slowly, thoughtfully, his voice raw with unfiltered emotion. "Listening to my mother yesterday changed everything," Diddy admitted openly, eyes locked firmly onto the jury. "I've spent years convincing myself, and everyone else, that what I did was justified, that the rules didn't apply because of who I was. But hearing my mother's truth, I couldn't hide anymore." He paused, taking a deep breath before continuing. "I built my life around power, success, and control, and in doing so, I lost sight of basic humanity. I created a world where consent was blurred by fear, manipulation, and power." The courtroom was utterly still, captivated by his admission. Reporters hurriedly captured every word, jurors listened intently, and even prosecutors seemed momentarily taken aback by this unexpected acknowledgement. When his attorney hesitantly asked him about specific charges, Diddy didn't deflect or deny. Instead, he affirmed many of the allegations, acknowledging explicitly the coercive environment he cultivated. "I called it leverage. I convinced myself it was normal, but it wasn't. It was wrong." Under cross-examination, the prosecutor gently but firmly confirmed each critical admission, systematically dismantling any lingering doubts about Diddy's guilt. With remarkable openness, Diddy agreed with the prosecutor's characterization. He'd built a system where genuine consent was nearly impossible. "I was blind to the damage I caused because no one around me ever challenged me, not until my mother did." The emotional intensity grew as Diddy turned directly toward Janice's empty chair. "My mother's courage woke me up," he confessed quietly. "I know nothing I say today can undo the harm I've caused, but facing the truth is a necessary first step." As he stepped down, the impact of his confession hung heavily in the air. His own words had shattered any remaining illusions of innocence. Reporters feverishly typed headlines, and jurors processed the stunning developments with solemn gravity. Diddy's unexpected confession wasn't merely a legal strategy, it was a rare moment of genuine accountability. His carefully built empire had crumbled in a single powerful moment of truth. The courtroom knew instantly that this trial was no longer about guilt or innocence. It was now about justice, accountability, and the human cost of unchecked power. As Diddy returned to his seat, the courtroom felt transformed. His confession had stripped away the last vestiges of denial, leaving behind only raw truth and the long overdue weight of accountability. Jurors looked shaken. Some victims wept quietly. Even veteran reporters seemed momentarily lost for words. The man once seen as untouchable had admitted in his own voice that he had abused the very power that made him famous. In the end, it wasn't the evidence, the lawyers, or even the charges that brought him down. It was a mother's unwavering demand for truth. And that truth, it changed everything. This case isn't just about one man, it's a mirror held up to an industry and a culture that often protects power at all costs. If you found this breakdown insightful, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more deep dives into the real stories behind the headlines.